part of it is a dare, how heavy can you get, and the other part is a secondary dare, which is like how deep can you get on the other side. So we have two sides of this album, and one is fast and furious, and the other one is deeper and mystical and heavy.
So is it safe to say that the story for the movie came before the music for Dethalbum IV?
Well, not necessarily. Well, yeah, I mean, yeah. The story for the movie came first. You know, so I had this story, and I knew these important parts. I just didn't know where. Basically, I had all the right information. I just didn't know what the order of it was going to be. And then the story room kind of helped me with that. And then I go off and I write the movie, and that's what I did. I took the script to Italy in the breaks between pandemics, and I wrote the script there. Meanwhile, you know, while all that stuff is happening, I'm demoing songs. So I have like 30 or 40 songs, and I'm like, or riffs or ideas or bits and pieces of songs that I am demoing for the Dethalbum IV. And that's a separate thing, because that's almost like some of that music is just, some of it's related to the movie, some of it is just new Dethklok music, which makes it more difficult because it's almost like an anthology. It's like a brand new story that lives and dies on its own. So I think of Dethalbum IV as an anthology, a lot of little different stories. Each one of them is saying something. Some of them are related, some of them aren't.
Yeah, that sounds very different. It's like, okay, it's like how you hear like the first three, I guess maybe just called it a time difference. It's like, yeah, like I don't say like, again, the maturity word. It's like, oh, like this is the next evolutionary step for a Dethklok album. And that's kind of where it felt sonically.
Yeah. I think that's fair to say, and that was something that was, whether or not, again, there are moments in this project where I go, I can't stop whatever is happening from happening. The Dethalbum IV is becoming the Dethalbum IV. It's just whatever has happened to me, and whatever the project is in between, it's going to mutate. Like I said, it's the same DNA, but it's mutating. Pickles is still Pickles, and Squitsgar is still Squitsgar. And Nathan's still Nathan, but this is, again, the idea of this record is, part of it is a dare, how heavy can you get, and the other part is a secondary dare, which is like how deep can you get on the other side. So we have two sides of this album, and one is fast and furious, and the other one is deeper and mystical and heavy. So how much heavier can you get, and how much can you dare the audience to go on this heavy journey with you? So that's Dethalbum IV to me. And like I said, it's the final mutation of Dethklok, which is, and I've been listening to lots of different stuff, but still I come back to kind of how did I start this out? And production wise, what's my ideology? What do I want this to sound like? What's going on out there that I like? What do I love about heavy music, about super heavy music from Cannibal Corpse to Meshuggah? What do I love about prog music? What do I love about trashy punk that's really super fast but articulated? What do I love about, like, how can I build a chorus inside of each one of these songs too that is like a hooky chorus, even though it's really, really heavy, from like Bloodbath to Horse of Fire to even like Gardener of Vengeance, the opening track, where how can I make a chorus that just steps out and makes itself known outside of the song and also works inside of the song. So all those things are, to me, that's just the writing process. And then production wise, I was like, this should sound somewhere between a modern Meshuggah Cannibal Corpse album and then production that I love. Like, I get into nerdy production. I love like Def Leppard's Hysteria. And so I think this is Cannibal Corpse meets Hysteria, and in production. And I added, some different keyboard sounds in the band, but I keep it pretty much bass guitar, drums, and screaming, growly voice.
And occasional pickles pop up in there.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. So on this new record, is it the same lineup? Because I know, like, when you guys did those that Adult Swim concert the other year,
yeah,
like you had a couple of fill-in people because Homeboy was busy
right
with the Aristocrats, and you had like a secondary, you had another guitar player up there. Like, is it just the basic crew that's on this new record? Because I didn't get the liner notes for this guy.
Oh no, it's how I do every record, which is, it's mostly, it's me on everything except for drums.
Oh, okay.
That's how this record is. So I play all the guitar, all the bass, all the keyboards, all the harmonies, all the everything. And that's the reason I do that is because, first of all, the way that I work, the way that I build music is that I never have the full thing figured out all the way. I mean, when I would do the TV show, I would have these bits and pieces of songs, and then I can kind of like elongate them, but that didn't make it easier. And it's nice to have stuff that you know is kind of working and landing with an audience already before you build it for a record. In this case, none of this music exists really except for in this project. So, or that's it, yeah. So I didn't like have like a whole season's worth of stuff that I was going to pick and choose from, and I didn't want to, because I wanted to build new stuff, and I wanted it to be like part of the same kind of mindset. I didn't want to start going into a different mindset. I wanted to go like in this project's mindset. So, yeah. So I'm sitting there. I'm usually sitting by myself and going like, okay, what is this? What attracts me to this? And is this interesting enough for me to cross the finish line with? Or is that interesting enough for Dethklok to cross the finish line with? Because I stopped kind of being me and I started kind of being them at some point, and they tell me what they want, and I kind of try not to fuck it up.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how it is. So I write all these demos, I program a bunch of drums, I play them for Gene Hoglan, and he has thoughts and ideas, and I go, usually these are suggestions. I'm just trying to support the riff, support the energy of the song. And if you've got a better take, then let me hear it, please. If you can beat this with something cooler, with this drum fill, anything, please do. Get creative. I would love it. And that's what I ask, with every part of the project, from like, here's my story, tell me what works, tell me what doesn't, and then here's like, whatever, if a description in the script where I'm describing something, I say, beat this with something cooler, storyboard artist, let's talk. I have to start the conversation and ask to be collaborated with. I'm begging to be collaborated with. So, and then I sit there with Ulrich Wild, who is the mixer, master, engineer, and co-producer
extraordinaire.
Yeah, and and we have a really kind of like super easygoing relationship. And usually I'm just like, I'm trying to find something that I haven't done that also feels like it's got the DNA of the original thing, and I want to move the ball forward in some way. And each record, I think, does, from Dethalbum 1 to Dethalbum 2 to Dethalbum 3 to the Doomstar record, which is a completely different beast, and it's not even a Dethklok record. It's a Metalocalypse record. And this final Dethalbum 4, I just wanted to have, basically the feeling is that this is the Viking funeral, this whole thing. And the last song is really the Viking funeral of the entire record.
Yes, it is. I'll say that Mermaider 3. That I was like, oh, it feels like, yeah, it does it has the continuing themes of the other previous two. And it's nice. Yeah. And it's like, I like this whole record. It didn't give you what you wanted, like, per se. Again, this is what you need. Like, you're expecting, like, yeah, you're coming into this record expecting one thing. You're not getting it 100% the way that you think you're going to get a Dethklok record. But it's like, oh, wait, I felt it was a very fitting ending track. I thought the whole record was, the sequencing was great. Your harmonies, there's a bunch of harmonies on here. It's like, we could do a quick breakdown of the album in a moment, but I got to say, like, it did also feel like the movie in a way, because we had Aortic is very much at the top, and Mermaider is at the end, and SOS, Song of Salvation is at the end. So it's got a nice, like, arcing wave thematically on its own. Like, if you didn't see the movie, you listen to the record, you get a nice sonic wave that doesn't bore you. It's like, it's so hard to get you've heard so many records that were like, okay, cool, I'm going to skip these next 3 tracks because they're just drowning on, and like, it didn't drown on. It's like, oh, okay, it kept your ears interested.
Well, this is a record that, like, had again, it's part of it is a dare. How much heavier can Dethklok get? And also, it's almost like these guys, the record starts like they've broken out of a cryogenic freezing state, and they're coming out with vengeance, and they're coming out to, like, really ensnare you with speed and crazy kind of like fury on the first half. So there's like the explosion, like, from the first song, Gardener of Vengeance, which is just fast and furious, to one of the heaviest things I think Dethklok has done, which I think is like Poisoned by Food, to like Mutilation on a Saturday Night, which is, I think, just about like, it's almost like about the pandemic being over, and let's go rage and party, and let's what if Dethklok came to your house and wouldn't leave and fucked up everything in your life? That's kind of that song too. So even though this stuff seems like it's very brutal and straight, there are jokes inside of these things. To Bloodbath, which is more of like power metal, kind of like big and grandiose, to like you know, to all that stuff. So there's like crazy different ideas inside of this that are still, to me, the DNA of Dethklok, but also just a little bit more brutal, and the production is different too.
Yeah, like I said, I have a good sound system, so maybe I'm a little spoiled, but yeah, it's nice. It's a very well, it's mixed. It's a great mix, and it sounds great. You know, turned up to 11. You know, and it's a fun. It just, yeah, man, it's great, man. Like, I Am the Beast, like it's everything. There's so many good. You're like, I'm gonna call you like, you're the king of modern harmonies. Like, yes, we have the legends that they do the dual guitar harmonies, but man, you do some. You just you just remind me, like, whatever. It's like, oh, you're like the death metal queen to me. It's like, oh yeah, like, you're very Brian May. Like, a lot of your solos to me invoke Brian May, like, in a good way. And it's like, oh man, it's like, I would never think to put like such a heavy riff with such melodically pretty. It's just wow. It's just not like it's not even like a Swedish melodicness. It's just its whole own. Oh wow, that's just badass.
Yeah, Brian May is a huge influence, and that is deliberate. You know, all that Brian May stuff. You know, from you know, you hear it, and the trick is, you know, to try to make sure that the heavy stuff is heavy, and the light stuff is light. So when you take this whole record and put it together, the heavy stuff is a little bit heavier, and the light, kind of mystical, you know, epic, big stuff is very big, but it's also like fraught. You know, like, so SOS, for example, is like, that is a song where it, you know, there's a lot of pressure put on it, but not really, because what the message has to be is what the message is, and the message is in the movie as well. But what I wanted it to sound like, I thought, okay, I've done Go Into the Water, I've done these like Black Fire Upon Us, these kind of slower, big, kind of medium tempoed, huge trudging things, and I wanted to do something that felt like it was fast, and you're in act 3 of the movie, but it's also, I mean, it can go from fast to very slow. It can go to half speed to double time, and that chugging riff that just keeps on, that just like, let that just drive the whole song. And then the chorus, to me, that's the chorus that you're going to be hearing, you know, whether or not you realize it, you're hearing that throughout the entire movie.
Yeah.
So yeah, but also this is a crazy. This is all pretty. Just, this record is going to sound different no matter what, whether or not I want it to, because at the top of this whole, you know, about a year ago, as I was even recording the rhythm guitars for this, my studio was robbed.
Yeah, I unfortunately remember that.
Like, yeah, and so, you know, what are you going to do? Somebody just breaks in and steals your shit. So a lot of really great guitars that I've used on other records. None of those guitars would make it to this record, and so I was left with a couple, like my signature Epiphone, my Ghost Horse Epiphone, which is like the main rhythm guitar, and I have a whammy bar on that too. So you're going to hear like Squitzgar now has a whammy bar, which is just a different tonality that you haven't heard before. And the way that I recorded, again, my house was under construction, so I couldn't be playing with a loud amp and drawing more attention here. So I used the Quad Cortex, which is a box, and it helped me to like get a lot of heavier sound. So I was just going for like seriously heavy stuff, and I thought, this is my last shot. How heavy can I make it? Because I've done plenty of really big melodic stuff, and I think the Score album and all the melodic and cool and big expansive stuff is part of the package. So I don't think of Dethalbum IV as being by itself. I think that you listen to in relation to the Score album, and it lives in relation to the movie too. So I don't think they really, each one of them gets something that the other one doesn't.
I get that. And I was tempted to bring that up, but you brought up the break-in.
Yeah.
Has anything been found or returned?
No. I went to like all the, you know, kind of major vendors in town and said, keep an eye open, and those guitars were so distinctive.
Yes.
that if they were to show up in the marketplace, I'm sure I'd hear about them, but they didn't show up. And you know, while that was happening, here's what happened was like on a Thursday morning, I guess I got robbed, and on Friday I had a Dethklok show to do in Philadelphia. So I had to take whatever I had left and go and fly out and do a Dethklok show. While I'm in the middle of making a record and a movie and a score at the same time. So my bandwidth to become a guitar detective was very limited. And so I mean, if I had nothing else going on, maybe I could find a way to like track something down. But at the time I had this job and that was the most important thing. And so what you realize is, you know, they can steal your guitars, but they can't steal your fingers or your creativity. So you got to keep moving no matter what. Show must go on.
Yeah, I remember when you posted it on Instagram. It's like we definitely, if you look at our page, we definitely reposted it and like
that's nice.
Brought it up there because I was like, oh wow, like within the first 10, 15 minutes, I happened to be online, I saw it, and I was like, nope, I gotta shout this out because I hate when that happens to any musician. I hate that when it happens to anybody. Period. Because you don't want to count everybody's money. Again, some people have insurance, some people don't. Some people just can't afford it. And like, hey, you're in a fortunate enough position where you could get some stuff replaced, you know, but other people, like, they lose a guitar gets stolen, you know. It's like, how many GoFundMe's have you seen for bands because their vans got broken into on the road?
I know, yeah.
So while we get ready to wind this down, because I just realized we've been on here for a minute, and I appreciate your time, man.
Absolutely.
If this is the last Dethklok record, I guess, you know, like, hopefully that this means like, you'll be some more tours, and you know, this tour coming up is very exciting, you know, with BABYMETAL. Baby, that's gonna be that's gonna be awesome, man. I'm here in New York, so I'm waiting for you to get to the Hammerstein, and you know, I'll be there. Like, I'm excited to see it. Last time I saw you was when you guys played Roseland with Black Dahlia Murder and all the remains back in the day, Machine Head.
Yeah, that's like the last big Dethklok tour. So, you know, I don't tour all the time, and I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. So the question is, is there going to be more Dethklok in the future? The answer is I'm not sure. You know, it's every time I do a record and every time I do a project, I always think that's the last record I'm ever going to make because it's so hard to make them. And it's just like, you know, you just want enough time to be able to get everything sorted out and working, you know, be able to hear everything, be able to fix everything, be able to do everything you want to do, be able to like take the time with each song to make it its own thing. So every time I make a record, I think that's the last one I'm ever going to make. This is crazy. Who would do this for a living? It's insane. But I think Dethklok is going to probably be Dethklok no matter what happens. You know, I've concluded the series. I've put out this kind of, you know, crazy, more kind of subterranean final record, and but I really do like playing my guitar. I like interacting with an audience. I love like where my place is, kind of in the shadows, but still, you know, not in the spotlight, but you know, being just a player, just like a hardworking player on stage with great people, like, you know, like who's going to join us on stage, which will be Ryan Beller and Neely Brosh will be on this tour, and Gene Hoglan. And so I think it's just really cool. And BABYMETAL, I think what we're going to do is, I think everyone's just going to have a smile plastered on their face at the end of our shows, and that's what I'm hoping for, is to break out of to like, again, to defrost Dethklok and parade them around and put out this, you know, this really fun live show and play with BABYMETAL, who I think are just so entertaining as well. So it's going to be like this wonderful, professional, heavy metal Las Vegas kind of a show that's going to be just crazy for all the people involved. And, you know, how heavy can you get and how much fun can you get, and how, you know, it really is the live experience is about fun because we get to add comedy and visuals and music all together.
Nice. I'd be okay with, like, you know, like, 2 years from now, just put out a little Planet Pissy EP. I'd be okay with that. Just for curiosity, I was like, what would a full EP of Murderface sound like? That gets me.
I know, you know, it really is funny because, I mean, well, he can't ever finish it. That's the tricky part. It has to be unfinished forever.
I know that feeling. I know that feeling way too well.
I know. I think that's part of creativity. I mean, there's a moment in the movie where we talk about that, and I think that's kind of like what this is, an unfinished project. So that was finally lucky enough to be finished. So Yeah. There is a world where if I had all the time and resources, and people say, oh, what about, I want to hear Snakes and Barrels with Dr. Roxo album with all the odds and ends and Toki's little crazy songs that he sings and all that stuff. And I always think, I can barely get a Dethklok record out. This is it's a lot of work, and I don't know if I would ever do it. Elongate the songs and put it through the same exact kind of treachery of building clips into full realized songs.
That's why you have Galacticon.
Well, Galacticon was how Galacticon started was I was writing all this music and I was just like, this isn't Dethklok. This doesn't sound like Dethklok. I do have these harmonies and these cool ideas that I did, because Dethklok and death metal is it's not. I am really excited about melody. I'm excited about aggression. I'm excited about all that stuff. And Dethklok is I don't get to put melody in the vocals, so the melodies have to be in the guitars. But I also can just get brutal sometimes, and just get really dark and evil with the music, and that to me is also fun, because for every dark and evil song, every two of those, you get one big epic song that's really grandiose and over the top. From Song of Salvation to Mermaid, or to, I even think Horse of Fire and Bloodbath. Those are all kind of big epic melodic songs, and then their counterbalances again. Because some of it can get too happy and some of it can get too brutal. So you just have to find that balance.
Yeah. Just real quick, Galacticon, I love that first record so much. It's a record that gets played on repeat all the time. That's I don't call you background music, but man, that's just a record that's one of my favorite things you've done. Just straight up. It's
thanks, man.
From it's just music. Yeah. I like your clean voice. And it's if you want to go tour on that stuff too later on, more, I know you guys did a few shows in LA, but man, I'm okay with more.
Yeah, we did one, yeah.
I'm okay with more of that.
That's interesting, yeah. That's funny, it's rare to go, all right, I'm just going to, what I had was, I remember, so Galacticon was all these songs that were just kind of I don't think these are Dethklok songs, but I think they're cool, and I like this because it reminds me of some kind of elevated, Queen meets the Foo Fighters meets Weezer meets Soundgarden, and I get to use different parts of my voice. And I've never tried to sing like that before, and so I was like, oh, this is it, okay, this is what I sound like, here you go. And then on top of that, so what happened was, we were making Dethalbum II, and there was a problem with the financing or something. So I already reserved a studio and reserved Gene and reserved Ulrich, and I wasn't going to turn them away. So I said, okay, I'm going to spend my own money. I'm going to make this. Gene, let's sort this out and let's make this record. So I had all these demos and we worked it all out. And then I figured I spent all this money, so I better finish this thing, see if I can make any of it back. And then I put out the record, and then I thought, oh, this is a story. This is interesting. I like this world. I like this kind of, this high stakes, extreme metal kind of, but still kind of definitely Brian May and Queen inside of there. And it's really fun. And all that stuff is definitely hard to articulate, but I pushed through and finished the record and just put it out, and with no real touring. But I'm proud of that record too. I think it's a really fun one. And so I appreciate that.
Dude, no, I appreciate you for putting 2 of those records out so far. Maybe one day we'll get a third, but for now, you have enough music that'll keep people happy for a good while.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I finish this whole thing, it will be, I think when you include the soundtrack album, the score album, that will be 8 records altogether. So there'll be 4 Dethklok records, 2 Galacticons, a Doomstar, and a soundtrack. So that's 8. I don't know how many more I need to make, but maybe I will. Who knows? Every time I finish it, I always think, I am not doing that again.
Until that bug starts biting you, you want to create more.
I know.
But dude, man, Brendon, I appreciate your time so much, man. Thank you for this extended interview. Anyway, man, enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you again for your time, man.
Okay, man. Thank you very much.